Hello, I'm Ann Minicozzi, co-host of Have Your Say. Diana Robertson is my co-host, and I'd like to welcome our guest, Anthony Stevenson, who is the principal of Radnor Elementary School and commissioner in Lower Merion Township, Ward 4. Welcome, Anthony, and thanks so much for being able to join us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, so in this time period, Anthony, we've been focusing on voting registration, and so now that the deadline has come and passed for voter registration, our emphasis is on getting out to vote, really encouraging folks to get out to vote. So I was just curious, knowing last year that you ran and obviously won as commissioner of Ward 4 of Lower Merion Township. How was that process for you, and did you find it difficult as you went around for people wanting to get out to vote?
First of all, thank you for having me. But the process was that I found when I ran was the key is communication and making FaceTime with folks. Mm-hmm. So for me it was, and for the Democratic primary I had a challenger, and he was a great opponent in the sense that we both were eager to share our ideas. So we shared platforms in different community organization-sponsored events, but we also did kind of like a competitive knocking on the doors. And so it's important that you knock on folks' doors and you make the FaceTime with them. Distributing literature mm-hmm. is the easy part, but it's about sharing with FaceTime your ideas, and that was the key. What I think was the key to it, and even for the fall election, which I didn't have an opponent, but I also had, I had constituents from all, independents, Republicans, and Democrats. Mm-hmm. Again, I knocked on every door to talk to everyone to get an idea of what it was that they wanted, and also share my ideas with them as well. So the key to that is to get out and make that introduction to folks.
Did you find that in general, do people know what the job of a commissioner is?
No, I mean, I think one of the things that needs to happen even more is educating folks about the different roles and responsibilities on the local level. Because the commissioner election, it was on a presidential election year, then for my ward, it was there was more interest in the election process. However, on those off years, a year like this year, what they call the off years, even though we have governor and U.S. senator in Pennsylvania, there tends to be less of a concentration on it, from the national on down to the local. And I think it's important that we educate more on the local level, because what happens is that's where a lot of the work gets done. Absolutely. And that's where the majority of folks are impacted. So I think it's important. So I had to educate people about what the role of commissioner was and how it impacted them. But I'll go back again to that was about communicating, participating with the civic organizations and the other organizations in the community. So it's been a slow but a growing process of people understanding how that role, my job and my role, helps them.
Okay. Yes, from the NAACP perspective, our slogan, so to speak, this year is, turn out 2018, because of as you say, the midterm elections. People do not always realize just how important it is to vote for those officials running for the governor and the U.S. senator. Did you find the interest level change according to generations, like the younger ones versus?
Well, I think it's not. I think it's not so much generational. I think about there are several factors. I think that in some folks it's an empathetic piece where they feel that they don't it doesn't going to make a difference. I think other people who feel that that their frustration is that it's the same thing.
Right.
So no matter what their vote, it's nothing. It's not going to change. And I think there's another group that are uninformed in the sense of not seeing what that impact of their vote is. I mean, we're talking that depending on where you are, the average of 12 to 17% participate in voting, and that crosses across all generations, all economic classes, and whatever. But it is clear that if folks don't show up, that there are groups that have been very good about organizing and showing up versus other groups, and those results are telling. So I think it's important that people work hard to turn out the vote, but inform people about why it's important and show the impact at the end to what their vote can help make those particular changes around legal issues that for judgeships and appointments and those kind of things. Those are important things that's going to impact long term. So I think it's important that people understand that the consequences of not voting has like long-term effects.
Right, absolutely. And then you mentioned so many years ago that you had run for office.
I ran for commissioner in Radnor Township in the 7th Ward in 1995. So it was the 75th anniversary of a woman's right to vote. And so on August 26th of that year, we had a nice get-together, not too much emphasis on a fundraiser, but just a get-together to talk about the significance of women voting and to mobilize some energy for the election. I wanted to ask you also, Anthony, in terms of educating, you're definitely educating people when you're running as a candidate. So when you circulated your petition, did people respond like they never signed a petition for a candidate before? How mobilizing is it for someone to sign a petition, let's say, versus when you knock on their door and they actually get to see the person who hopefully they're going to vote for? Which do you think is like sort of more mobilizing or energizing for the voter?
Well, for me, I was fortunate that before I decided to run, I made several introductions to different community groups, talking about my interest and why I was interested to get their support. So I had some assistance with getting the petition signed. But I do think it is important beyond the petition to get people on board to support me. Like I said, I had a opponent was to educate them. So knocking on doors is not an easy thing because you're knocking on doors, you're an unfamiliar face, and you're talking about sometimes talking to them about an unfamiliar job. So a lot of people didn't even know what commissioner. So I spent a lot of time not only talking about why I wanted to run, but even just explaining what the commissioner's job was, but also explaining about why I was Ward 4 commissioner and and why I was knocking on their door versus opposed. So it was a very interesting and humbling opportunity to meet so many people and then get their feedback on certain things that are happening. And once I got elected, some of the folks reminded you what those conversations were about. So it was a good experience.
And now you have to follow up on those concerns now that you're elected.
But following up, but also understanding that the system is not it is not one that is just automatic. There's a process, and then there's Lower Merion Township, like all of them, have a staff. So elected officials don't automatically make decisions. It's a process. We are the legislative body that have entrusted township managers and the staff to make decisions, and we either support it or ask for modifications or deny it, depending on how we look at things.
Can I ask also, since you've been elected and you've communicated with so many people, are there more people coming to township meetings? Because that's something where it's such a great opportunity to know what's going on as a citizen, as a resident of your particular township. to learn about all those issues, what's happening right there on the ground? Are more people coming to commissioners' meetings that you can see?
I don't. We have, depending on the topic. So there are certain topics that bring out people for the different pieces. However, like a lot of other townships, Lower Merion has. We live stream it so people are informed. So a lot of times I'm at a meeting, I may get an email during the meeting from folks about it, so people are watching it, or after the meeting. But also we've been, one of the things I've done is try to increase communication. So I send out a e-letter that I constantly send out informing people about different topics and get feedback that way, so I can take it back, or people communicate directly to me or through the township staff. So while they may not attend the meetings, I think because of communication and social media, we're able to get feedback from them about different positions in a way, and to help inform and make decisions.
Okay.
So was being a Lower Merion Township Commissioner one of your ambitions, or was it something that kind of came about, or what?
No, it was not. It was not on my radar. What happened was I've always enjoyed studying politics, and in particular interest in following local politics. And so when there were some concerns in our area where I live in Ardmore about development and what the neighborhood was feeling, that it was changing and being developed. I saw opportunity when the commissioner who was serving decided not to run. And I found myself in a position like a lot of other people, what I call sideline coaching, where it's easy on the sideline to tell what should be done and how it should be done. But then, I decided to share my thoughts about different things about development and other issues, and decided to say, I have to be a participant. I can't just talk about it. I have to be a part of it. And so I decided to run. That doesn't mean that everybody has to run, but it means that I think that one of the things that if we want change, then we have to be a part of the change. We can't just will it change. Change requires people to be actively engaged and participate in things.
Okay, great. So now that you are commissioner, do you find that as you're getting information out and communicating that information, that people do maybe have a better understanding or feel that they are participating a little more from the perspective of giving you feedback as to some of these different issues that they had before?
Well, I think so. I think people in the communities are feeling that they're heard, and I think part of it is, and that's a large part, is that people need to feel that they're heard. Number one. Number two, that even though if the results are not what they want, at least they want to also know that a process was conducted and fulfilled to show that you did check into it, that even though it wasn't what you wanted to hear or receive, that they did it. And the third thing I think is important is that people also understand what the ordinances are and the rules and regulations are, because sometimes folks make assumptions about certain things should be done a certain way, but then once they understand that there's rules in place or regulations or ordinances in place for certain reasons, they feel better about it, that it's not just somebody just doing something just for the sake of it. So
okay. And also having the position of being principal of a elementary school, is that something that during this time period that gets talked about, voting? So even though obviously students aren't able to, but to be able to go home and ask their parents.
I think civic engagement, all schools in the area are very good about helping kids be engaged about certain the process of our democracy in America, whether it's at the local level all the way to the national. So yes, schools, as a part of our curriculum, that we do engage our kids around the whole notion about the election process.
Okay. Because the reason I asked that question, because I know one of our focuses has been on looking at high school students, especially seniors, who are 18 and will be in a position to vote for the first time. And one of the part of the conversation that we get, or feedback that we get all the time, is that they don't know who the candidates are. So they say, they
Right.
look at, so even when you say the positions and what the job descriptions are, and then they look at the ballots, and for the most part they say, well, I don't know any of these people. How do I vote? And so we talk about on different sites that they do have profiles and information, and the League of Women Voters, and there are other websites that actually do have that information. But now in the process, I was at a meeting just earlier the week, and we talked about being able to try to pull that and bullet it, because for the most part, the younger generation, they're not going to take time and read all of that. And so how do we still educate them, give them the information they need, and have them to be able to make good decisions as part of the voting process as well. So, so that's what I was wondering. In the schools, do they talk about that process? Do they talk about individuals? Do they talk about parties? I remember years ago.
I think so.
We had that, but I was wondering if it's done as much.
Well, I think at the high
as
school
before.
they do it more at the high school because kids are more informed about it. However, I have to say that beyond high school, you have a lot of adults who don't know who candidates are, what they represent. I think one of the things that when we talk, going back to the frustration of people participating, is that we have become so polarized. And so people have just aligned themselves with a party or affiliation rather than an issue.
Right.
And I think we have to, especially at local level, because, I think all politics is local. I think there has to be more conversations about nonpartisan conversations, because as neighbors, I think there are a lot of things that, that people have conversations that has nothing to do with party ideology. It has more to do about how systems function and how it is in the best interest of a community or neighborhood to be functionable. And I think that is, if there's one thing that I would hope that comes out of this whole process, is that people engage more about having honest conversations about how do we improve the system in a way where it is going to be a betterment for us, and then I think you'll have more people eager and willing to participate rather than engage from a polarized and divisive party alignment.
Okay. Yeah. I know recently with the Senate confirmation for the Supreme Court justice being able to even discuss that process, and for folks understanding that because we do have the U.S. Senate race going on, and to understand that here are folks who are in a position to confirm literally life appointments for justices, and to have people think, and I thought it was very interesting to have people not only look at qualifications, but actually talk about, so how much does character of a person,
Right.
how important is that, and in understanding that part of this could be in that discussion, grooming young folks to want to run as well. And so for them to understand with the use of social media, with all that they do, how important it is to be careful what you are putting on social media, how that gets perceived for you as character, the character issue part, and just understanding what they thought about that piece in and of itself. So qualifications as far as, credentials versus or character of a person. And so I guess what would you say to that piece as far as especially the younger generation, the college students, high school students, where a lot of times you're going through different transitions, even just to find out who you are as an individual, but considering that your actions now may impact your future.
Well, I think the last Supreme Court case, the confirmation piece that came up is just a similar to remind us about, maintaining a sense of integrity or whatever it is. I mean, what it brought out, and again, was a reminder to not only young folks but all folks that there is we are held at a standard as elected officials or appointed officials, and that it just reminds also young people, when you ask about social media and things that were not 20 years from now that we didn't have to deal with or were not available. It doesn't take away to maintain a sense of civility and character to the utmost, and that's not making a judgment about it, but it's a reality, and that we should also maintain that high standard. And we are held at a standard when we represent that, and we just have to accept that that's a part of the job.
Okay. And so I do want to emphasize that the election is November the 6th, Tuesday, November the 6th. The polls are open from 7 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening. And we want to encourage folks who are working to maybe go to the polls before they go to work, because sometimes you get held up or things happen and this might be hard to get out. So if you go to the polls before you go to work, then you've got it done and you probably could get in and out and be able to vote. And also to emphasize that an underutilized tool is absentee ballots. Right. So people who are going to be away, college students who are away from home, folks who are sick or disabled and just difficult to get out, to make sure that they are using or be able to access the use of the absentee ballot, and so that we can capture as many votes as possible.
Right. So
that we utilize all tools. Anybody who has a problem with transportation, we're going to make sure that you have phone numbers that you can contact people. So working with the local churches and other community groups such as NAACP, we will be putting information on Facebook and our website as well, so that people will be able to access this information. And just get out and vote. So,
I think one of the things about going to the polls is all of the electioneering, the people from all the different parties who are trying to hand you literature and influence your vote just one more time before you, now it's push the buttons rather than pull the levers, at least on the machines that I vote on, it's a push button, it's all electronic. How do you recommend that people negotiate that walking into the polling place?
Well, I think the best way to do that is not wait till you get to the polls to be informed on who the candidates are and what the issues are. I mean, those folks on election day, they are volunteers who want to support the candidate on positions that they believe in, and I would venture to say that the majority of them know exactly what their candidate stands for, and they're able to articulate that. But it's when you're in that 5-minute window trying to get in line and vote, that's not a lot. So I would hope that folks take the time to vet the candidates and vet the positions and vote based on their informed and their education versus just the last-minute literature.
Right. And then what I do is I just collect everyone's literature. I accept everyone's literature on the way in, and I recycle and hand it back on the way out, and I just say thank you to everyone, because it can be intimidating when you're walking into the polling place like that. And I've been on both sides of being the voter and then being the person handing out the literature, and you don't want to be intimidating, but you are standing right there, within that short distance before you go into the polling place.
Yes.
But I think the online sources that are available for learning about candidates and the issues, their views on the issues is handy, what's in the newspaper. And if
Right.
you can go to a forum,
Right.
that's really great too. But then also meeting someone right at your front door and being able to have that conversation, what you're interested in, is very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to also remind individuals that if you have any problems or issues while you are attempting to vote, that we will make sure that there are numbers available that you can call immediately so that you can get some assistance as to what the problem is or what is stated,
Yeah,
you're
I
being
think that's-
told the problem is.
That's so
Yeah.
important that if you go to the polling place, don't leave
Right.
without voting, because you
Right.
can always cast a provisional ballot.
Absolutely.
And then the county Board of Elections office will sort it out afterwards if you're in the wrong precinct or something like that, because the polling places are sometimes moved. And just to make sure that you do vote when you're there.
Right.
And then
Absolutely.
it'll get counted when it gets back to the main county office.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we're going to have as much information out as possible, or at least the information that you can access, the different resources, and just through the churches, libraries, community centers, just having that before us, so that we're actually doing this countdown
Right.
to the 6th, and that everybody understands, has a better understanding of that. They really have to get out and vote, and they still have time to, even though voter registration is over with, you can still go on the website to check to make sure you are. Your registration, if you are already registered, is active.
Right.
And so you can check on that, and if there's any problem, if you've just recently registered and you don't see that, you can call now before Election Day to make sure that you are in fact registered. And also to check on your polling place.
Right.
Make sure your polling place hasn't moved, because in some cases that happens as well. So you go one place and then you don't know. So all of these things, the more we do ahead of time, as you say,
Right, and
then you're
prepare.
prepared as to where to go and who you're going to vote for, and then you can go ahead and vote. So,
Right. Do your homework,
yes.
which would be very appropriate to say, since we're educators here. We want everyone to do their homework.
Absolutely.
Votespa.com and a couple of other
Absolutely.
links.
Right. The was it the Vote Spa?
Votespa.com, right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
I think that's all for this program.
Yes.
So thank you so much,
Thank you for having me.
Anthony Stevenson, for joining us.
Yes.
And thank you to Diana. And for our episode for today, thank you for watching Radnor Studio 21. And your homework is to be prepared and go out to vote. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.